by acting now, when we still have the policy choices, we can do things another way.
Stefano Da Fre, he is live with us from France.
La France.
Francais. Such a pleasure to have you. He is a director and also a documentary of climate change, The Day I Had to Grow Up. So tell us about this. Is this a good initiative, and will this move us forward in, I guess, trying to salvage what's left of the Earth?
Look, the amount of carbon dioxide that is released is insurmountable right now unless you get a comprehensive plan including everybody. In my documentary, The Day I Had to Grow Up, we really focus on looking at climate activists that are involved in the Sunrise Movement and talking about taxes. If you don't have a coalition right now with Biden's infrastructure plan that also is working with Brussels in Europe, it's never going to happen because these countries, the superpowers, have so much consumption, and all of us are affected because it doesn't stay localized. With all the amounts of changing in weather, we have had the last 12 years the hottest summers on record.
Yeah, and we're also seeing the impacts of climate change on the West Coast. I mean, not only are they baking, but they're also dealing with those wildfires as well. All right, so the EU announcement on climate and the Democratic announcement as well. Do you think the international world is doing enough? Because you just said it yourself, it takes everybody, it takes a village to actually get a handle on climate change.
I think there's more initiative now than there was when I was a kid. I think that we realize that this affects all of us, and particular people who are disproportionate in terms of the wealth gap. You see this in the way that it uses up our infrastructure. You see that it affects energy grids. You see that it affects water. So part of this is, it's a long time coming, and I think that people realize that unless we get ahead of this now, we're on a collision course to really exhausting all the resources left in this planet. I think that the taxes are definitely a plus, and innovation is going to be the second aspect that takes us out of this.
And I mean, when we talk about climate change, I think it's also important for us to talk about how cities, and as you know, a lot of Black and brown folk live in these cities, how the temperatures tend to be warmer by about 10 degrees. Because it's concrete, it's the buildings, it's called the urban heat island impact, and it's like everything heated up by the sun all in one place. Can you talk about how enough is not being done to handle climate, issues like that in urban areas?
Well, you can see that the infrastructure there in those places have those challenges, and that heat that happens there also causes sort of collapse in these grids. Let's think of it in the sense of what happened to Puerto Rico, right? You see hurricanes that happen, drastic forms of temperature, and you see the people that have the least amount of resources being able to then fix those infrastructure problems. One last thing that I really want to say is really important is that climate change also affects the amount of disease that happens. So like things like Zika, we noticed this in our documentary, The Day I Had to Grow Up. You can see that the amount of airborne illnesses that are there in Central America, as the temperatures rise, they can also travel to places more northern. We just cited the Pacific Northwest, places in the Northeast. Some of these diseases have never been seen, and it's a direct effect of the warming of our country and of the globe in total.
Yeah, and you talked about Puerto Rico, but more recently, Texas. I mean, they went through that deep freeze, and then all of a sudden they were baking. It was the grid as well. I mean, they were baking. So can you talk about that as well? What do we need to do? Because this will be our final wrap.
Look, the thing that is the most important is to try in the best way for all of us to get on the same page, and not even to realize who's at fault. Whether it's the idea of, Republicans say it's the warming of the planet because of the challenges of the climate has always changed like this, and has always had sort of various degrees of changes. Or you look at the Democratic side that say we are creating this. The reality is, to put that aside, it is happening. Objectively, these things are happening, and we are all in this together. So getting clear that this is a problem that all of us need to face, putting aside the blame and trying to fix our infrastructure with things like Biden's plan that really focuses on water, energy, and helping out Black and brown communities to handle a lot of these infrastructure problems that we have.
All right, Stefano Da Fre, co-director of The Day I Had to Grow Up, a documentary about youth activism, joining us all the way from France. Au revoir.
It was wonderful to be with you again this week.
I'm saying bye, right? Au revoir?
Yes, you say au revoir. That's right. That's right.
Revoir.
Or what I would like to say is à bientôt, which means we'll see each other soon.
I'll take that. Thank you for joining us on BNC.